The average American starter home now costs $400,000. $400,000 for laminate countertops, a garage that barely fits one car, and a backyard the size of a postage stamp. Your parents bought their first house for $68,000 in 1985. Adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $195,000 in today's money. So even after you account for every penny of inflation over 40 years, today's starter home still costs double what theirs did. But that $400,000 price tag, that is just the entrance fee. Because on top of that mortgage, you are quietly hemorrhaging $8,300 every single year in property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. That is $691 per month. That builds zero equity, generates zero return, and vanishes into thin air like your paycheck on the first of the month. Over 10 years, that is $83,000 gone. Poof. And that is before the roof leaks, the furnace dies in January, or the plumbing decides to have a midlife crisis. And the worst part? The person who told you to stretch for that house, who told you renting is throwing money away, who told you real estate is always a good investment, was probably your parents. And they meant well. They absolutely genuinely meant well. But the financial blueprint they handed you was built for an economy that no longer exists. And following it today is not just outdated. It is not just a little off. It is mathematically devastating. My name is Felix, and I create easy-to-understand animated videos about personal finance. If that is something that interests you, consider subscribing. Today we are going to do something uncomfortable. We are going to take 5 financial rules that an entire generation swears by, rules your parents taught you, rules your teachers parroted, rules that financial advisors still preach like gospel on a Sunday morning. And we are going to hold each one up to the light of actual, current 2026 mathematics. And one by one, we are going to watch them crumble. Here is what we are covering. Rule number 1. Get a safe college degree because education is the best investment. Rule number 2. Stay loyal to your company because hard work and dedication get rewarded. Rule number 3. Save your money in the bank because cash is king. Rule number 4. Pay off your house as fast as possible because debt is the enemy. And rule number 5. Buy a starter home as soon as you can because renting is throwing money away. 5 rules. And I am going to prove, with actual math, line by line, dollar by dollar, that every single one of them is now actively working against you. Not slightly, not marginally, catastrophically. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why following your parents' financial advice to the letter is one of the most expensive mistakes your generation is making. And more importantly, you will know exactly what to do instead. But I want to be very clear about something before we start. This is not about blaming your parents. They gave you the best advice they had, the advice they followed, the advice that worked for them. The problem is that the rules changed, the economy shifted, the math inverted. But nobody updated the playbook. Nobody sent the memo. And an entire generation walked into adulthood armed with a financial GPS that is routing them straight off a cliff. I call this the boomer trap. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now, before I dismantle each rule, let me take you back, because the world your parents built their financial advice around is so fundamentally different from the one you live in that it might as well be a different planet. Let us start with college. In 1985, the average total cost of a 4-year college degree, including tuition, room, board, and fees, was about $9,400. Total, not per year. Total. Adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $35,800 in today's money. Sounds like a lot until you hear this. Today, the actual average cost at a private nonprofit university is $56,190 per year. That is not a typo. Per year. Even at a public 4-year university going out of state, you are looking at $41,920 per year. The cost of higher education has not just outpaced inflation, it has humiliated inflation. It has lapped it 3 times and is waving from the finish line. Now let us talk about what your parents did with their savings. In the early 1980s, the average savings account paid somewhere between 8 and 14% interest. Let me say that again so it actually registers. 8 to 14%, just for parking your money. The average inflation rate at the time was about 3.5%, so your parents' money was growing faster than prices were rising. They could literally leave cash in a savings account and watch it generate real wealth. That is like planting a tree that grows dollar bills. Today, the national average savings account pays 0.61%. 0.61%. Meanwhile, inflation is running around 2.4% as of February 2026. So every single year, your money sits in a standard savings account. It is not growing, it is shrinking. Your parents' savings strategy was a wealth building engine. Yours is a wealth destruction machine with a friendly bank logo and a mobile app that sends you cheerful notifications about the 4 cents of interest you earned this month. And then there is the job market. In 1985, the average worker stayed with one company for over a decade. Pensions were standard, loyalty was rewarded with stability, regular promotions, and a retirement package that meant you could actually stop working before you died. The deal was simple. You give the company your career. They give you security. Handshake. Done. In 2026, the average pension for private sector workers is extinct. Actually extinct. Like a financial dinosaur. And here is a statistic that should genuinely make your blood boil. According to multiple studies tracking wage growth over the past decade, employees who stay at the same company for over 2 years earn, on average, 23% less over a 10-year stretch than people who switch jobs every 2 to 3 years. 23% less. Your parents were rewarded for loyalty. You are being mathematically punished for it. Same virtue, opposite outcome. So when your parents sit you down at Thanksgiving and tell you to save in the bank, pay off the house, get that degree, stay loyal, and buy a home, they are not lying. They are telling you what worked. In their economy. In their decade. Under their conditions. The problem is that every single one of those conditions has been inverted. And the advice, perfectly preserved in amber since 1985, is now a financial trap for anyone born after 1990. This is not generational warfare. This is not about being angry at your parents. This is about math. Cold, hard, undeniable math. The kind of math that does not care about your feelings, your family traditions, or what your Uncle Larry says after his third beer at the barbecue. And once you see these numbers, you will understand exactly why doing everything right still feels like running on a hamster wheel inside a burning building. Because you are falling behind. And it is not your fault. The system did not update, you just inherited the old manual. Let us begin the demolition. Rule number 1. Get a safe degree. Education is the best investment you can make. That sentence has been repeated so many times, it has become almost religious. Parents whisper it at bedtime. Guidance counselors chisel it into stone tablets. And in 1985, it was objectively true. A 4-year degree cost about $9,400 total. The average starting salary for a college graduate was around $22,000. So you could pay off your entire education with roughly 5 months of gross income. 5 months. That is not an investment. That is a cheat code. Going to college in 1985 was like buying Microsoft stock from a garage. Almost mathematically impossible to lose. Now let us do the exact same calculation in 2026 and watch the whole thing implode. Meet someone we will call Sarah. Sarah is 22 years old. She did everything right. Everything her parents told her. She picked a solid state university. She studied something practical, not underwater basket weaving, an actual employable field. She graduated in 4 years. And she walked across that stage with a diploma in her right hand and $100,000 in student loan debt wrapped around her ankles like an anchor. $100,000. At 6% interest, on a standard 10-year repayment plan. Let us watch what happens to Sarah. Her monthly student loan payment is $1,110. Every single month, before she eats breakfast, before she pays rent, before she buys a single gallon of gas, $1,110 leaves her bank account and flies to Sally Mae. That is $13,320 per year. Gone. Automatically. Now, Sarah followed the playbook. She got a decent job making $65,000 a year. That puts her above the median household income. She should be doing well, right? She should feel comfortable. Let us do the subtraction. $65,000 gross annual income after federal taxes, state taxes, and FICA contributions, Sarah takes home roughly $52,000. That is about $4,333 per month in her actual bank account. Sounds manageable. Now subtract the student loan, $4,333 minus $1,110 equals $3,223 per month to actually live on. For rent, groceries, transportation, insurance, her phone bill, the occasional cup of coffee that those personal finance gurus will shame her for buying, $3,223 a month. That comes out to $38,680 per year of actual disposable income. Now, here is the part that should make you physically uncomfortable. Sarah's friend Jake graduated high school the same year Sarah started college. But Jake did not go to college. He went into a skilled trade: plumbing, electrical, HVAC. Pick one. By the time Sarah is walking across that stage at 22, diploma in hand, debt around her neck, Jake has already been earning a paycheck for 4 years. He is making $45,000 a year. Not glamorous, but steady. After taxes, he takes home about $38,000. And his total debt? Zero. Not low. Not manageable. Zero. Sarah spent 4 years and $100,000 to arrive at almost the exact same disposable income as someone who skipped college entirely. She has a framed piece of paper on the wall. Jake has 4 years of work experience and zero debt. She is starting at negative $100,000. He is starting at zero with savings in the bank. That is not an investment. That is a very expensive treadmill with a diploma mounted above it. You are running full speed and going absolutely nowhere. But it gets worse, because we have not talked about the opportunity cost, and the opportunity cost is where this advice goes from questionable to absolutely brutal. While Sarah was in college for 4 years earning $0, Jake was working. If Jake invested just $300 a month during those 4 years, which is very doable on a $45,000 salary, into a basic index fund returning 7% annually, by the time Sarah graduates, Jake has approximately $16,800 in investments. $16,800 growing, compounding, building momentum. Sarah, on the other hand, has negative $100,000. Not zero. Not starting fresh. Negative $100,000. The real gap between them on graduation day is not $100,000. It is $116,800. And that gap does not stay static. It compounds. Every single year, Jake's investments grow while Sarah's debt accrues interest. The head start gets bigger, not smaller. Now, you might be thinking, but Felix, Sarah will eventually out-earn Jake because she has a degree. College graduates earn more over a lifetime. And statistically, over a 40-year career, that is often true on average. The college earnings premium is real. But here are the two things nobody mentions when they cite that statistic. First, that lifetime premium has been shrinking for decades while the cost of obtaining it has been exploding. The gap between what you pay and what you get back is closing fast. Second, and this is critical, that premium is an average. It includes surgeons earning $400,000 and investment bankers pulling 7 figures. It also includes English majors bartending at 32, psychology graduates working retail, and communications degree holders who are, ironically, struggling to communicate their value to employers. The average hides more than it reveals. The debt, however, is not an average. The debt is a certainty. You sign for $100,000, you owe $100,000 plus interest. That is a guarantee. The return is a gamble. And if someone offered you that deal at a casino, you would probably think twice. $100,000, certain cost for a statistically probable but individually uncertain payoff. That is not the definition of a safe investment. That is a leveraged bet with your 20s as collateral. And by the way, over the full 10-year repayment period, Sarah does not pay back $100,000. She pays back $133,200. $33,000 in pure interest on top of the original balance. She is essentially paying $33,000 for the privilege of having paid $100,000 for an education that put her at the same starting line as someone who did not go. That is not a treadmill. That is a treadmill with an entry fee and a monthly subscription. I am not saying college is worthless. There are fields where a degree is genuinely required and the return is undeniable. Medicine, engineering, computer science sometimes. But the blanket advice of just get a degree, any degree, it will pay for itself, has gone from being wisdom to being one of the most expensive lies we tell young people. And your parents cannot see it because in their math, it was true. The calculus changed. The advice did not. And we are just getting started. That was rule number 1. Let us move to rule number 2. And honestly, this one makes me the angriest. Because at least with college, you can argue that people chose to take on the debt. With this one, the money is stolen from you so quietly that most people never even realize it is gone. Stay loyal to your company. Work hard, keep your head down, climb the ladder, and you will be rewarded. In your parents' era, this was not just advice. It was a social contract. You gave the company your loyalty, your best years, your weekends, your late nights. And in return, you got consistent raises, promotions on a predictable timeline, a pension that would sustain you after retirement, and genuine job security that let you sleep at night without dreaming about LinkedIn. It was not just a career strategy. It was a STEM. Both sides had skin in the game. And for decades, it worked beautifully. In 2006, that system is dead. The companies killed it. They buried it in the backyard right next to the pension plan, and then they put up a motivational poster about teamwork on the wall where the benefits package used to be. Let me show you the math of what I call the loyalty tax. This is not a metaphor. This is a real, calculable dollar amount cost that you pay every single year you stay at a job without checking your market value. It is the most expensive bill you never receive. Meet someone we will call Marcus. Marcus is 25 years old and he just landed his first real professional job. $60,000 a year. Good company. Nice people. Free coffee in the break room. He likes it there. His manager tells him he is valued. HR tells him his annual merit raise of 3% is highly competitive. 3%. Let us track what highly competitive actually looks like over a decade. Year 1, Marcus makes $60,000. Year 2, $61,800. Year 3, $63,654. Every year, that reliable 3% raise ticks the number up just enough to feel like progress, just enough to feel like the system is working. By year 5, he is at $67,591. By year 8, $73,859. By year 10, Marcus is earning $80,634. He has been promoted once in 10 years. He trained 3 new hires, 2 of whom left for better offers. He is considered a senior member of the team. He feels like he has climbed the ladder. And from the inside, 3% per year sounds like growth. It sounds like you are moving forward. But sound and math are very different things. Now let us look at Marcus's college friend, Dena. Dena started at the exact same salary, $60,000. Same industry, same skill set, same level of ambition. But Dena does something that makes Marcus uncomfortable. Every 3 years, she interviews externally, gets a competing offer, and switches companies. She does not do it for fun. She does not do it to be disloyal. She does it because she did the math. Each time Dena jumps, she negotiates a 15% salary increase. That is not unusual. The data shows that external job offers routinely come with 10 to 20% bumps, and in competitive fields, sometimes 30%. In between jumps, Dena gets the same standard 3% annual raises that Marcus gets. Nothing special, the only difference is what happens every 36 months. Let us race them. Year 1. Both start at $60,000. Year 2. Both get 3%, both at $61,800. Year 3. Both get 3%, both at $63,654. Then Dena jumps. New company. 15% bump. Year 4, Dena is at $73,202. Marcus, still at his desk, gets another 3%. He is at $65,564. Already, Dena is making $7,638 more per year for the exact same work. Years 5 and 6 both get their standard 3% raises. Then Dena jumps again. Year 7, after her second jump, Dena is earning $86,863. Marcus, on his 9th year of loyalty and his second promotion, is at $73,859. The gap is now $13,004 per year. And accelerating, years 8 and 9, standard raises for both again. Then Dena makes her third and final jump of the decade. By year 10, Dena is making $108,900. Marcus is making $80,634. That is a $28,266 per year difference. $28,266 every single year for the same skill set, the same experience level, the same industry. The only variable that changed is that Marcus stayed and Dena left. But I am not done yet, because the gap per year is only part of the story. Let us look at what they each earned in total over the full decade. Marcus, the loyal employee, earned cumulative total compensation of approximately $702,000 over 10 years. Dena, the strategic job switcher, earned approximately $822,000 over the same period. Dena made $120,000 more than Marcus in the same 10 years. $120,000. That is a house down payment. That is a fully funded emergency fund, a maxed-out Roth IRA for 5 years, and a vacation in Europe. That is a life-altering amount of money that Marcus left on the table because he believed the system would reward his loyalty. If someone told you they accidentally left $120,000 in cash sitting on a park bench over 10 years, one bill at a time, you would probably stage an intervention. You would call a doctor. You would at minimum ask some very pointed questions. But when the same thing happens through a paycheck, through 3% raises that feel like progress but are actually slow-motion wealth extraction, we just call it stability. We call it being responsible. We call it not being a job hopper. And here is the beautiful, gut-wrenching irony that should keep you up at night. Those companies that Marcus stayed loyal to, the ones that rewarded him with that generous 3% raise, those same companies would have happily paid Dena that $108,900 salary to come in from the outside, without blinking, without hesitation. They had the money. They had the budget. They just had zero incentive to give it to the person who was already in the chair. The system does not reward loyalty, it exploits it. Your employer knows you are comfortable. They know switching jobs is stressful. They know you have built friendships with your coworkers. They know you have memorized the coffee machine, learned the software systems, and settled into a routine that would be painful to break. And they are counting on all of that emotional friction to keep you from ever discovering your real market value. It is like a gym that charges you $50 a month because they know you hate the hassle of canceling. Except this gym is charging you $12,000 a year in unearned raises. And the cancellation process is called applying to 3 companies on LinkedIn. Your parents called it job stability. The math calls it a $120,000 donation to your employer's bottom line. A silent 10-year tithe to a company that would eliminate your position in a quarterly earnings call without losing a minute of sleep. Now, you might be thinking, but Felix, there are benefits to staying at a company. Institutional knowledge, relationships, stability. And you are right, those things have value. But $120,000 of value? Over 10 years. Really? Because that is the price tag. That is the actual bill for loyalty. And if you are going to pay it, you should at least know you are paying it. That is rule number 2. The loyalty tax is real, it is calculable, and it is bleeding a generation dry while HR departments send out pizza party emails. Now let us demolish rule number 3. And this one is sneaky because it does not feel like it is hurting you. It feels safe. it feels responsible. It feels like the right thing to do, and that is exactly why it is so dangerous. Save your money in the bank. Cash is king. A penny saved is a penny earned. Your parents grew up in an era where this was not just good advice. It was practically a wealth-building strategy. In the early 1980s, savings accounts were paying 8%, 10%, sometimes 14%. Your parents could walk into a bank, deposit their paycheck, and watch it grow. Not slowly, not by pennies. Actually, meaningfully grow. The average inflation rate was high too, around 3.5%, but the bank was outrunning it by a mile. You could literally save your way to financial security. It was that simple. In 2026, recommending a standard savings account as a wealth-building tool is like recommending a horse and buggy as your daily commuter vehicle. Technically, it gets you there. Mathematically, it is insane. Let me show you why. And I want you to follow this math carefully because this one is the most invisible trap of all five. You managed to save $20,000. That is genuinely impressive, by the way. Nearly 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency. So if you have scraped together $20,000, you have done something most people in this country have not. You should feel good about that. Now, you take that $20,000 and you do what your parents told you. You put it in a savings account at your bank. The national average savings account interest rate as of March 2026 is 0.61%. Year 1. Your $20,000 earns $122 in interest. $122. For an entire year. That is 33 cents a day. You could find more money between your couch cushions. But fine, it is safe. It is insured. It is there when you need it. Let us fast forward. After 5 years of not touching a penny, your balance is approximately $20,615. After 10 years of perfect discipline, zero withdrawals, leaving it completely untouched, your $20,000 has grown to approximately $21,257. You earned $1,257 in interest over an entire decade. That comes out to about $125 a year. About $10.50 a month. About 35 cents a day. You could literally earn more money picking up loose change in a parking lot. But here is where it goes from disappointing to devastating. Because we have not introduced inflation yet. And inflation is the silent killer of savings accounts. The long-term average inflation rate in the United States is approximately 3.29% per year. Over 10 years, that means the cost of everything around you, groceries, gas, rent, clothing, healthcare, that cup of coffee you are not supposed to buy, all of it rises by roughly 38%. So to maintain the same purchasing power as your original $20,000, not to grow it, just to keep it even, just to be able to buy the same stuff 10 years later, you would need $27,654 in your account. You have $21,257. You are short by $6,397. Let me make sure this lands. You did not spend a single dime. You were disciplined. You were responsible. You did exactly what your parents told you to do. And your reward for a full decade of financial discipline is that you lost over $6,000 in real purchasing power. Your money shrank while you watched it. The number on the screen went up by $1,257, but the actual value of that money went down by $6,397. That is not saving. That is slow-motion erosion disguised as safety. It is like putting food in a refrigerator that is secretly raising its internal temperature by 1 degree every month. You open the door after 10 years and everything has rotted. But the light is still on, the compressor is still humming, and it looks like everything is fine. Now, you might be thinking, but Felix, what about high-yield savings accounts? Those pay around 4% or more right now. And you are absolutely right. High-yield savings accounts offered through online banks are paying significantly better than the national average. Some are offering 4.5% or even 5% APY right now. But here is the problem. Two problems, actually. First, the vast majority of Americans do not use them. According to the FDIC, most deposited savings in this country sit in standard accounts at traditional banks earning that pitiful 0.61%. People save where they bank, and their bank is not advertising the fact that they are paying 20 cents on the dollar compared to an online competitor. Second, and this is the more important point, even at 4%, you are barely keeping pace with inflation. You are preserving purchasing power, not building wealth. You are running on a treadmill set to exactly inflation speed. You are sweating, you are working, but you are standing in the exact same spot year after year. You are not moving forward, you are just not moving backward quite as fast. Now, what if instead of putting that $20,000 in a savings account, you put it in a broad market index fund? The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% annually over the past 30 years. Adjusted for inflation, that is about 7% real return. Let us run the same 10-year scenario, $20,000 in an index fund at 7% real returns. After 5 years, your balance is approximately $28,000. After 10 years, $39,300. After 15 years, $55,200. After 20 years, $77,400. You nearly quadrupled your money. The same $20,000 that became $21,257 in a savings account became $77,400 in an index fund. Same starting amount, same time period, different parking spot. The difference between the two after 20 years? Over $56,000. From the same $20,000. That is not a marginal difference. That is not a rounding error. That is a life-changing gap. The savings account gave you $1,257 in interest and took away $6,397 in purchasing power. The index fund gave you $57,400 in real, inflation-adjusted growth. And the only reason most people keep their long-term money in a savings account instead of investing it is because their parents told them it was safe. And it was safe. In 1985, when that savings account was paying 8%, when the bank was literally beating inflation for you, when Just Save was a complete financial strategy. Today, the safest place for your long-term money is ironically the place that guarantees you lose purchasing power every single year. The bank is not protecting your money. It is slowly, quietly, systematically melting it and charging you nothing for the privilege. Now, I want to be clear. You absolutely should have an emergency fund in a high-yield savings account. 3 to 6 months of expenses, liquid, accessible, safe. That is not optional, that is essential. But anything beyond that, anything you are saving for the long term, 5 years or more, parking it in a standard savings account is not caution. It is self-sabotage with a safety label on it. That is rule number 3. And we are not even halfway through. Ready for rule number 4. Good. Because this is where things get counterintuitive. This is the one that will genuinely surprise you. And it is the one that will probably make your parents the most uncomfortable when you explain it to them at dinner. Pay off your house as fast as possible. Debt is the enemy. The sooner you are debt-free, the sooner you are free. I grew up hearing this one. Your parents said it. Dave Ramsey screams it. Your grandparents nodded along sagely. And the emotional logic is incredibly seductive. Debt feels like a weight on your chest. Carrying a mortgage feels like a 30-year prison sentence. And paying it off early feels like freedom. Pure, clean, debt-free freedom. And your parents are right that being debt-free is an incredible psychological feeling. I will not argue with that for a second. But here is the problem. Feelings and mathematics are not the same thing. Your chest does not care about compound interest. Your emotions do not understand opportunity cost. And when you run the actual numbers on aggressively paying off a low-interest mortgage, instead of investing that same money, the math says your parents' advice could cost you nearly $100,000. Let me show you. Dollar by dollar. Let us say you took out a $300,000 mortgage a few years ago and locked in a rate of 3.5%. That was a very common rate before the recent hikes. Your standard monthly payment on a 30-year fixed is about $1,347. Now you decide to follow your parents' advice. You are going to be aggressive about this. You are going to throw an extra $500 per month at the mortgage on top of your regular payment. Every single month. No exceptions. Birthday month? Extra $500. Christmas? Extra $500. That month where your car needs new brakes? You figure it out and still send the extra $500. Disciplined. Responsible. Exactly what the debt-free community would celebrate. And it works. By paying an extra $500 per month, you shave roughly 8 years off your 30-year mortgage. Instead of paying for 30 years, you pay it off in about 22 years. And you save approximately $45,000 in total interest payments over the life of the loan. $45,000 saved. That is real money. That feels incredible. Your parents are proud. Dave Ramsey is doing a victory dance on his radio show. You own your home free and clear. But we need to talk about that $500, because that $500 per month had somewhere else it could have gone. And that somewhere else is where the real money lives. If instead of throwing that extra $500 at the mortgage every month, you had invested it in a broad market index fund returning 7% annually after inflation, let us watch what happens over those same 20 years. $500 per month times 12 months. That is $6,000 per year of your own money going in. Over 20 years, you contribute a total of $120,000. Your own cash. Now add compound interest at 7%. After 20 years, that $120,000 of contributions has grown to approximately $260,000. Let me repeat that. You put in $120,000. You got out $260,000. The market gave you an additional $140,000 in pure compound growth that you never worked a single hour to earn. It grew while you slept, while you watched Netflix, while you argued about what to have for dinner. $140,000 just appeared, because you let math do its thing. Now let us put the two paths side by side. Path A, you followed your parents' advice. You paid the mortgage down early. You saved $45,000 in interest. You feel debt-free and emotionally light. Financially, your net gain is $45,000. Path B, you made only the minimum mortgage payments and invested the extra $500 per month instead. You have $260,000 in your investment account, of which $140,000 is pure growth. Financially, your net gain is $140,000. The math is undeniable. Path B beats Path A by approximately $95,000. $95,000. That is the cost of following your parents' advice on this one. That is not theoretical money. That is not pretend wealth on a spreadsheet. That is $95,000 in real, liquid, accessible investments that you chose not to have because paying off the house felt better. It is like choosing to walk 10 miles in the rain to save $5 on gas while your neighbor takes the car, arrives in 15 minutes, and spends the extra 2 hours earning $200 freelancing from home. Technically, you saved money. Practically, you punished yourself. Now, you might be thinking, but Felix, the stock market is risky. It crashes. What if I invest for 20 years and lose everything? And that is a completely legitimate concern. The stock market does crash. It crashed in 2000, 2008, 2020, and it will crash again. On average, a significant correction happens about once every 7 to 10 years. That is scary, that is real. But here is what history shows, and this is not my opinion. This is verifiable data going back almost a century. Over every 20-year rolling period since 1926, the U.S. stock market has delivered positive returns. Every single one. Not most of them. All of them. Through world wars, recessions, pandemics, financial crises, presidential assassinations, and at least 3 moments where people were absolutely certain the sky was falling. Every 20-year period ended positive. The key ingredient is time. If you are investing on a 20 to 30-year horizon, which is exactly the timeline we are talking about, with a mortgage, short-term volatility is noise. It is weather. What matters is climate. And the climate of long-term investing is consistent, reliable growth that dwarfs any savings account and any low-interest debt payoff. And here is the part your parents really do not want to hear. That 3.5% mortgage is the cheapest money you will ever borrow in your entire life. When your debt costs 3.5%, but your investments return 7 to 10%, paying off that cheap debt early is not smart. It is the financial equivalent of pouring premium gasoline into a bicycle. You are overspending resources on a problem that does not need them, while the actual engine of your wealth goes unfueled. Every extra dollar you throw at a 3.5% mortgage is a dollar that could be earning 7% in the market. The spread between those two numbers, that 3.5% gap, is not just a math problem. It is the single biggest leak in your financial plan. And nobody told you about it because pay off your house sounds responsible, and keep cheap debt and invest instead sounds reckless. But the math does not have feelings. And the math says responsible is expensive. And that brings us to rule number 5, the grand finale, the sacred cow. The one belief that is so deeply embedded in the American psyche that questioning it feels almost unpatriotic. Buy a starter home. Stop renting as soon as you can. Renting is throwing money away. If I had $1 for every time someone repeated that specific line at a family dinner, at a barbecue, in a condescending comment on a Reddit post, I would probably have enough for a down payment. And I understand why people believe it. Homeownership feels permanent. It feels like you are building something. Your parents bought a house for $68,000 in 1985, watched it triple in value, and concluded that real estate is the single greatest investment vehicle on the planet. And for them, it genuinely was. But in 2026, the math tells a very different story. And the concept I want to introduce you to right now is something I call the homeownership sunk cost lie. This is the gap between what people think they made on their house and what they actually made after you subtract every cost nobody mentions at the closing table. Let us walk through it. Every dollar. You buy a $400,000 starter home. You scrape together a 5% down payment. That is $20,000. You get a 30-year mortgage for the remaining $380,000. You move in, you put up pictures, you buy furniture from IKEA. You feel like an adult. Now let us fast forward 10 years. The housing market has been decent. Your home has appreciated to $500,000. You decide to sell. You list it, it sells, and the proceeds land in your bank account. On paper, you just made $100,000 in profit. $500,000 sale price minus $400,000 purchase price. $100,000. Your parents are ecstatic. See? They say, probably while eating pie. We told you buying was smart. You just made $100,000. Except you did not. You did not make $100,000. Not even close. Let us do the math that nobody does. For 10 years, you paid property taxes. The median U.S. property tax bill is approximately $3,500 per year. Over 10 years, that is $35,000. This money bought you exactly zero equity. It funded the local school district and the fire department, which is lovely, but it did not make you one penny richer. For 10 years, you paid for maintenance and repairs. The average homeowner spends about $3,100 per year on routine maintenance alone. That is gutter cleaning, furnace servicing, lawn care, appliance repair, that sort of thing. Over 10 years, $31,000. And that is just routine stuff. That does not include the $3,500 water heater replacement in year 3, the $4,200 HVAC system that died in year 6, the $8,500 roof repair in year 8 when those shingles finally gave up, the $2,800 plumbing emergency in year 9 that happened naturally on a holiday weekend. Real houses break, constantly, expensively. At the worst possible time. For 10 years, you paid homeowners insurance. The national average is approximately $1,750 per year. Over 10 years, $17,500. You never filed a claim. You paid $17,500 for the privilege of being allowed to own the house you are already paying a mortgage on. Let us add up just these 3 categories. Property taxes, $35,000. Maintenance, $31,000 minimum. Realistically, more like $45,000 to $50,000 once you include the emergencies. Insurance, $17,500. Conservatively, that is $83,500 in completely unrecoverable costs. Generously, it is closer to $100,000. Money that built zero equity, generated zero return, created zero wealth. It simply evaporated into the air like steam from a boiling pot of your financial ambitions. But we are not done. Not even close. When you sell the house, you pay a real estate agent. The standard commission is about 5 to 6% of the sale price. On a $500,000 home, that is $25,000 to $30,000. Let us split the difference and call it $28,000. For helping you list the house, hosting a few open houses, and unlocking the front door for strangers. And seller closing costs. Title insurance, transfer taxes, attorney fees, various administrative charges, figure another $8,000 to $10,000. Let us call it $9,000. Now let us do the final subtraction chain, and I want you to watch this number very carefully. $100,000 in apparent profit. That is the number your parents see. That is the number the real estate agent brags about. Minus $35,000 in property taxes, you are at $65,000. Minus $31,000 in maintenance, minimum. You are at $34,000, minus $17,500 in insurance. You are at $16,500, minus $28,000 in agent commissions. You are at negative $11,500, minus $9,000 in closing costs. You are at negative $20,500. You lost over $20,000. On a house that went up in value by $100,000 over 10 years. You did everything right. The market cooperated. The house appreciated by 25%. And after subtracting the costs that nobody warned you about, you walked away with less money than you started with. If someone told you they spent a decade running a small business, working nights and weekends to maintain it, dealing with constant unexpected breakdowns, pouring in emergency cash, and after all that blood and sweat the business lost them $20,000, you would tell them to shut it down and walk away. But when it is a house, we call it building equity. We call it the American dream. We call it being responsible. Now let me show you what the renter did during that same decade. Let us say rent in the same neighborhood was $2,000 per month. That is $24,000 per year. Over 10 years, $240,000 in total rent paid. See, your parents say. You threw away $240,000 on rent. At least the homeowner has something to show for it. But does the homeowner really? Let us compare total housing costs. The homeowner paid approximately $238,000 in mortgage payments over 10 years, plus $83,500 in sunk costs, plus $37,000 in commissions and closing costs when selling. That is $358,500 in total housing expenditure over 10 years. The renter paid $240,000 in total. The renter spent $118,500 less on housing over the same decade, in the same neighborhood. And here is where it gets really interesting. That $20,000 the renter didn't use as a down payment? If they invested it in an index fund at 7% annual returns, after 10 years, it grew to approximately $39,300. And the monthly savings, the renter's total housing cost was about $2,000 per month. The homeowner's total was about $2,987 per month, including everything. That is roughly a $987 per month difference. If the renter invested just half of that monthly savings, say $500 a month, into the same index fund, after 10 years, that becomes approximately $86,000. So after 10 years, the renter has roughly $125,000 in liquid investments. Growing, compounding, accessible. The homeowner has a house that, after all costs, actually costs them money, and the equity they did build is trapped inside the walls. It is illiquid. You cannot spend home equity at the grocery store. You cannot use it to cover a medical emergency without taking out another loan or selling the entire property. The renter has a portfolio. The homeowner has a building that needs a new roof, And yet, society will still tell the renter they are throwing money away. That is not financial analysis. That is a cultural hallucination passed down from a generation where houses cost less than a modern Toyota Camry. Now, I want to be honest with you, completely honest, because I am not here to tell you that renting is always better or buying is always wrong. Life is not that simple. Homeownership can be a good financial move if you buy well below what the bank tells you can afford. If you plan to stay for at least 15 to 20 years so the equity build becomes meaningful and the sunk costs get absorbed, if you go in with your eyes wide open about the true all-in cost. And if you do not sacrifice your investment contributions to make the mortgage work. But the blanket advice of buy as soon as you can, renting is just throwing money away? In 2026, with these prices, these interest rates, these hidden costs, that advice is not wisdom. It is tradition masquerading as logic. It is a financial fairy tale that made sense in 1985 and is now mathematically upside down for most first-time buyers. That is rule number 5, the homeownership sunk cost lie. And that completes our demolition of all 5 rules. So now you have seen the math. All of it, the college debt treadmill, the $120,000 loyalty tax, the savings account that secretly melts your money, the $95,000 mortgage payoff mistake, and the homeownership fairy tale that loses you money even when the market goes up. 5 rules. 5 pillars of conventional financial wisdom. And every single one of them, when you take a flashlight and actually look at the numbers underneath, is working against you. But I do not want to leave you standing in the wreckage, because seeing the problem is only half the equation. The other half is knowing exactly what to do instead. So before I give you the updated playbook, I want to talk about what this actually feels like, because the math is one thing. The daily experience of living inside the boomer trap is another thing entirely. Here is what the boomer trap actually feels like day to day. It feels like checking your bank account before buying groceries, even though you have a degree that costs 6 figures, even though you have a job that sounds impressive at parties. It feels like watching your coworker, the one who jumped to a competitor last year, casually mention they just bought a new car, while you are sitting in the same chair at the same desk, wondering if you can afford new tires this month. It feels like your savings account showing a positive balance, and somehow, still feeling like you are losing, because deep down, somewhere in the back of your brain, you know that number should be bigger. You just could never figure out why it was not. It feels like getting a $2,000 raise at your annual review and briefly feeling excited, then doing the math and realizing inflation just ate the whole thing. You celebrated standing still. It feels like your parents asking, again, when you are going to buy a house. And not knowing how to explain that the house they bought for $68,000 now costs $400,000, and that no, it is not because you spend too much on avocado toast. It feels like looking at personal finance advice online and feeling like NONN of it applies to you, because it was all written for someone who is either already wealthy or living in 1988. It feels like being one unexpected car repair, one medical bill, one bad month away from the whole thing collapsing. Not because you are irresponsible, but because the margin is razor thin. Because every dollar is already spoken for before you earn it. That low-grade financial anxiety that hums underneath everything you do like a refrigerator in the next room, that constant dull vibration of not quite enough, it is not because you are bad with money. It is not because you are lazy. It is not because you are playing a 2026 game with a 1980 rulebook. And the rulebook is broken. But here is the empowering part, the part that actually matters. Now you know. You know the rules changed. You know when they changed. You know how they changed, and you know the exact dollar amounts those changes are costing you. And that knowledge, that clarity, that is worth more than any diploma on a wall. So here is your updated playbook. 5 specific actions, 1 for each broken rule. These are not theories. These are not motivational platitudes. These are exact steps with exact numbers that you can start acting on this week. Action number 1. Audit the college math before you go, not after. If you are considering college or if you are helping your kid decide, here is the calculation. Take the total 4-year cost of the degree, including room, board, and fees. Add the interest you will pay over the repayment period. That is your real cost. Now take the realistic starting salary in that specific field, not the brochure salary, the actual median starting salary from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Subtract taxes. Subtract living expenses. What is left is what you can realistically put toward that debt each year. If it takes more than 5 years of that remainder to break even on the degree cost, that degree is a financial risk, not a financial certainty. At that point, consider alternatives. Trades pay $45,000 to $90,000 and often come with zero debt. Community college for 2 years, then transferring cuts the total cost by 40 to 50%. Employer-sponsored education lets you earn while you learn. Certifications and boot camps in tech fields can land $70,000 plus jobs in 6 months for under $15,000. College is not automatically bad, but it is no longer automatically good. Treat it like what it actually is, a major financial investment, and run the numbers before you sign. Action number 2. Price check your salary this quarter. This week, go to Glassdoor, LinkedIn Salary Insights, or Levels.fyi and look up what someone with your exact title, your years of experience, and your skill set is being offered at other companies right now. Not what your company tells you is competitive, what the actual open market says you are worth. If the number you find is more than 10% higher than what you currently make, congratulations, you just discovered your loyalty tax. You are paying it every single pay period. You do not have to quit your job tomorrow. You do not have to burn any bridges. But you do need to know the number, because you cannot negotiate from ignorance. You cannot fight a tax you do not know exists. At minimum, take one external interview every 12 months. Even if you love your job. Even if you have no intention of leaving. Do it to calibrate. Do it to know. Action number 3. Move your emergency fund to a high-yield savings account this week. If your emergency fund is sitting in a traditional savings account at a big bank earning 0.61%, you are literally watching inflation eat your safety net bite by bite. This is a 30-minute fix. Open a high-yield account at an FDIC-insured online bank paying 4% or more. Transfer your emergency fund. Done. This single action will earn you roughly $680 more per year on a $20,000 emergency fund compared to the national average rate. That is real money. That is your phone bill for 6 months, for 30 minutes of work, and for everything beyond your emergency fund, everything you do not need in the next 5 years. Open a brokerage account and invest in a low-cost total market index fund. Set up automatic monthly contributions. Even $100 a month, especially $100 a month. Because $100 a month at 7% for 30 years becomes approximately $113,000. Your future self will specifically thank you for this. Action number 4. Do the mortgage opportunity cost math on a napkin. Seriously, a literal napkin. Here is the formula. Take your current mortgage interest rate. Subtract it from 7, which is the long-term inflation-adjusted return of the S&P 500. If the result is positive, every extra dollar you throw at the mortgage is mathematically better off in an index fund. Example, your mortgage rate is 3.5%. 7 3.5 equals 3.5. That means every extra dollar sent to the mortgage is costing you 3.5% per year in missed investment returns. Over 20 years, that adds up to almost $100,000 on just $500 a month. Now, if your mortgage rate is 7% or higher, which many new mortgages are in 22,000, the calculus shifts. At that point, paying down the mortgage is a competitive guaranteed return, and it might make sense as part of your strategy. The point is not never pay extra on your mortgage. The point is do the math first. Make the decision based on numbers, not emotion. Based on the spread, not the feeling. Action number 5. Calculate your true monthly housing costs before you buy anything, before you sign a single document, before you fall in love with the kitchen backsplash, before you start pinning furniture ideas on Pinterest. Do this calculation. Take the monthly mortgage payment, add 1/12 of annual property taxes, add 1/12 of annual insurance, Add 1% of the home value divided by 12 for maintenance reserve. That is your real monthly housing cost. For a $400,000 home with a 6.5% mortgage, 20% down. That looks like this. Mortgage payment, roughly $2,020. Property taxes, $292 per month. Insurance, $146 per month. Maintenance reserve, $333 per month. Total real monthly cost, approximately $2,791. Now compare that to 28% of your gross monthly income. That is the maximum housing cost threshold that financial planners have used for decades. If your all-in housing cost exceeds 28% of your gross income, you are stretching into the danger zone. The zone where one bad month triggers a cascade, where the car repair leads to the credit card, which leads to the minimum payment spiral, which leads to the 2 a.m. anxiety math. Renting while investing the difference is not giving up. It is not failure. It is not throwing money away. It is a strategy, a mathematically viable, historically proven strategy that works especially well in high-priced markets, where the ownership math simply does not add up. Those are 5 specific, actionable, number-driven moves. Not inspiration, not motivation. Math you can execute on. Math that fights back against the boomer trap. Now let me bring this home, because I think it is important to end where we started. Your parents gave you the best advice they had, and every single rule they taught you worked. In 1985, college was cheap and guaranteed a return. Savings accounts paid 8%. Loyalty was rewarded with pensions and promotions. Mortgages were simple, and homes were affordable. The rules were not just good advice. They were a complete system that reliably produced middle-class stability. But that system does not exist anymore. College costs exploded by over 500%. Savings accounts stopped paying real returns. Companies replaced pensions with pizza parties and replaced loyalty with layoffs. Housing prices disconnected from income reality so dramatically that the average home now costs more than 5 times the average household income. The economy changed. The rules did not. And somehow, across Thanksgiving dinners and graduation speeches and well-meaning phone calls, the old advice kept traveling, perfectly preserved, completely unchallenged. Passed from one generation to the next like a family heirloom that nobody realized was ticking. That is the boomer trap. You are not failing because you are lazy. You are not behind because you are irresponsible. You are not struggling because you bought too many lattes or took too many vacations. You are fighting an economy that fundamentally changed while the instruction manual stayed frozen in time. But here's the thing about traps. Once you see them, they stop working. You now know the loyalty tax exists, and you know how to price check your way out of it. You know the savings account is melting your money, and you know where to move it. You know the college equation has flipped, and you know how to calculate whether a degree is worth it before you sign. You know the mortgage payoff math is backwards, and you know the napkin formula to prove it. You know the homeownership sunk cost lie, and you know how to calculate the true cost before you buy. You were handed a map to a country that no longer exists. Today you drew a new one. The person who checks their market value is the person who escapes the loyalty tax. The person who invests instead of just saves is the person who builds actual wealth. The person who questions the old rules is not disrespectful. They are informed. And being informed is the most powerful financial tool that exists. Your parents did their best with the information they had. Now you have better information. And that is not a betrayal of their advice. That is the evolution of it. If this changed how you think about money, even a little bit, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A friend, a sibling, someone at work who just got another 3% raise and thinks they are doing great. And if you want more videos that tear apart the financial rules nobody questions and replace them with math that actually works in 2026, subscribe. I will keep doing the math. You keep making the moves. I will see you in the next one.